Hi everyone, and welcome to the second episode ever of How to Build a Country. I'm Colombe, this is Andrea, and today we will speak about why nations are evil. I know, right? I'm very excited about this. Before doing this, let me just introduce ourselves and our work. We are the co-founders of Atlas. Atlas is the global movement that is working to unite people across borders to basically try to save humanity. What we mean by that is there are a lot of issues like climate, fiscal injustice, and so on that are global, and we can't deal with it. So we want to create a democratic system of global governance, basically a global country that is inclusive and democratic, so that we can finally solve global issues.
This is exactly what we're doing, and today we're gonna deep dive in a very important topic, something that many of us are not aware of: the terrible impact that nation states have had on humanity so far.
I actually wanted to call this episode The School of Good and Evil. Which ones do nations fall in? I don't know if you've seen this amazing Netflix movie, but Andrea told me that only me and 14 years old would be able to understand it.
I vetoed it, I'm sorry.
But basically our aim throughout this discussion is to show that we kind of believe that nations are a natural phenomenon, that we all belong to one, and that's that. But it's not the case. So we're going to talk about why they're wrong and what is a better system, the one we're proposing, because we're super objective, obviously.
And by the way, neither me nor you have signed up for this system. We grew up in the system, we were born in a nation, but I'm not happy with what my nation does. I'm not happy to be clustered in a group of people that feels different than others. And I think that today we're going to explain why it would be better if this was not the case.
Exactly. So, first point. What are the problems with nations? And for this, we can go on forever. So we selected a few. The first thing, and I can start with it maybe, is national interest. So obviously, nations and countries, basically, are responsible for their citizens within their borders and some expats abroad or whatever. And this means that the national interests always come first. For this, I have two easy examples of why this is actually a really bad thing. COVID and climate. So, at the beginning of the pandemic, we heard a lot the sentence, we are all in this together, we won't be able to get out of COVID unless we act as one, and so on. I agree, a global pandemic is global, doesn't care about borders, it impacts everyone. Unless everyone is vaccinated, unless everyone has access to PPE and so on, everyone is fucked, basically.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't say those words in this live. And however, we very quickly saw that countries started hoarding resources. They started hoarding masks during the pandemic, hoarding vaccines more than they needed, not even sharing their IP or tech know-how for other countries to be able to produce them at low cost for low-income countries. So very early on, we saw that national interests came first in the midst of a global crisis. And this meant that the pandemic went on longer than it should have. It meant that more people lost their lives. It meant that countries had a longer and bigger economic downturn, and so on and so forth.
I think it's very clear from this example and many others that we have the nation states kill. Basically, the way we administer society, the way we approach problems is incredibly bad and suboptimal. And COVID is a perfect example. People died because of that. So it's not only about, some political discussion or preferences, but actually people die. The second topic is climate that you mentioned before. Do I even need to go into it? It's clear that we are in a global crisis. It's clear that no one is figuring out how to solve it. And still nowadays, there are countries that because of their political leaders, agendas, public discourse, are either ignoring the climate crisis, accelerating, and for sure, not getting together to solve it. As we record this episode, COP27 is happening in Egypt, and it's already clear the national interest is coming first. The national leaders are basically appealing to their voters. So it's a very bad sign for humankind.
So basically, because of their very nature, nation states put national interests first, which means that for global issues that impact us all, whether we want to admit it or not, it impacts us negatively. I think a second example that we have to speak about is colonialism.
Absolutely. Colonialism is the mother of all evil. We all know right now, we acknowledge the fact that colonialism have killed millions of people, have completely destroyed economic development, social development of entire continents. And only now we're starting to address it is a big word because we're not addressing, but to understand the political consequences of what happened and try to imagine how to address it. And colonialism came out of the idea that certain groups of people felt superior in power compared to others, and so felt the idea that they could invade them, they could dissect their territories, their traditions, and basically exploit them. And I have a small anecdote. Looking at colonialism in Africa, it's famous, it's well known that the lines of states in Africa are completely drawn on a paperback and cut through tribes, through traditions, through ethnic groups, and this has caused massive suffering for the African continent in the last century. And these lines, these maps, were drawn in a Berlin ballroom in 1884 by a group of leaders and a head of states. They just decided that it was time to divide Africa, to have spheres of influences. So, but this was done not even knowing Africa, not even being present there. So it's already a crime. But the way it was done, it was so clear that for big empires with a strong national identity, this was just little more than dividing mines or gold. And I think this helps us understand how bad can nation states, nationalism, and hence colonialism be.
And obviously there's other factors into this, such as religion, inherent and pure racism, and so on. But we still see countries trying to hoard resources of others, trying to colonize them, and so on. There are a few other issues we want to talk about. The fact that countries, by their very existence and by their very creation, actually create conflict.
Yeah.
And so here, I want to talk about two types of conflicts. Conflicts that are being created because new countries come into existence, and conflicts that are being created because countries exist already. New countries, the formation of new countries actually creates conflict. It creates wars of independence, civil wars within new nation states arising out of struggles linked to ethnic nationalist character. And it creates interstate wars declared by governments seeking to help oppress co-nationals in new neighboring nation states. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad to want new independence. I'm just saying the creation of new countries creates conflict. On top of it, the existence of all the countries actually create conflict as well. We've seen so many wars being waged, including in today's world, linked to the fact that countries want to fight over resources, want to try to get resources of other countries. So they declare war over the fact that they want to divert attention from their own national problems and so start foreign wars.
Ukraine and Russia right now.
Yeah, or probably Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, there's a lot of them, right? Like, we see over and over again the fact that countries, by their very existence, create conflict. And that can't be underestimated.
Another massive issue that countries cause is inequalities. And this is very important because nowadays we have the technology, we have the structure to ensure that no one has to die of hunger, go without medicines, without shelter. But despite that, this is still the case. And we've seen it in COVID and countless other examples. Why? Because of how nation states behave. We have countries that are very powerful, very wealthy, and they really want to keep this status. They really want to keep all their wealth and ensure that only their citizens or part of their citizens actually enjoy these benefits. And this means that for many other countries, simply there are not enough resources, there are not enough medicines, there is not enough food. And despite the fact that richer countries waste a lot of these resources. So clearly, if we're able to create a global system where resources were distributed fairly, where there was no administrative reason not to deliver medicine or aid or fiscal support across the planet, we will all be better off. We will forget things like famine, death by diseases, and similar.
And also because right now a lot of wealthy countries are doing well because of their past crimes,
Yeah.
right? We mentioned colonialism, but a lot of countries are getting richer and richer because they got rich while destroying others and killing others. And this, on the other hand, the countries that were the victims of colonialism and the survivors of it have to catch up with everything that was stolen, everything that was destroyed, all of the conflicts that were created, without reparations, without support, without cancelling their debts, without any of this. So countries, again, playing against one another and not even being held responsible for it.
So inequality is another massive case. Another massive issue that countries cause are borders and all the negative consequences of the existence of borders. Think about it, because of these imaginary lines that have been drawn, sometimes completely randomly, as I said before, some other times they're just heritage of a time where it was impossible to do better than that, and you had to use horses to cross countries, but right now it's completely different. Because of these lines, again, people die. Let's think about the Mediterranean Sea. More than 25,000 people have died since 2014 trying to enter Europe, trying to access safety in Europe. And because of the fact that this is a natural border the European Union tried to defend, people are drowning and dying every day.
Yeah, I think it's not even dying, they're being killed because we're refusing to support, we're refusing to create humanitarian corridors. We are directly responsible for the death of those people. It's not like they're randomly dying. We could be stopping those deaths. We could actually be supporting them. Instead, we are funding and passing agreements with, for example, the Libyan Coast Guards that are known to be responsible for countless human rights abuses and so on. So borders, and because we want, as Andrea said, to defend them, which bullshit, defend them, again, I shouldn't say this word, defend them against what? Hurt people. And then it also creates second-class citizens, right?
Yeah.
And it's something we discussed in our live yesterday on YouTube and on Twitch. I, for example, I'm French, I have a French passport. It's much easier for me to be able to travel and visit other countries and relocate than people from across the world, right? I will get waiver programs, etc., whereas others won't. Based on a passport, on a piece of paper, when people even have one, because some people are stateless. And as a result, it creates different class of citizenships.
Yeah, and borders, just as an anecdote, are actually a very modern invention. They were standardized and became something that really impacted our life only 100 years ago, basically post-World War I, and same with passport. And the big change that we've seen is actually since 9/11, so in the last 20 years, because of imaginary threats and the step up of mass surveillance, actually borders have become way more strict, way more walled, way more pervasive. And interesting enough, many historians have also seen this approach of nation states to borders as projection of their insecurity, inability to control basically globalization and become part of it.
So if I go back to my school of good and evil, even though it's not the title of this video, basically, countries have created a lot of problems. To a certain extent, I understand why they were needed at one point, why they were created, not in the way we understand them today, not with, clear borders and exclusive sovereignty over territories and so on. That I think is very weird, if you think about it a few seconds. But I understand for administrative purposes, to levy taxes and so on and so forth, to be able to provide certain services, you needed to have nation states. This I get. However, we've seen that it creates conflict. We've seen that it led to many crimes such as colonialism. We've seen that it puts national interest first ahead of the global interest, and as a result, causing a lot of harm. We've seen that it creates a rise in inequalities. We've seen that borders that are a recent invention are a big evil in the world. So why? Why do we have nation states like this? Often we wake up and we're like, well, that's the way the world is, whatever. But no. If we want to build a better world, if we want to change the world, we need to ask ourselves, why are nation states operating this way?
Can we do better, basically? And we think we can. That's why we are doing all this broadcast and our work. But we think that right now with the technology we have at hand, with the status of the planet, the issues that we are forced to tackle in the next 20, 50 years, there is room to finally move to a global infrastructure. I use this terminology infrastructure because it could be obviously a country, it could be an institution, it could be a federation. There are many ways to imagine the structure, and we are not going to decide during this live how it's going to be. There's going to be a long process to get to there, and actually we're going to tell you about that in a minute. But basically there is a way, we have the means to create something where everyone feels included, where resources are properly distributed, where global issues are tackled together, and where basically things like international wars, nuclear wars, disease and so on are dealt with or eliminated completely.
Yeah, it's possible. So for this, we need basically a global country. Let's do it. Let's build it. It's what we're doing at Atlas. Starting in a month and a half in 2023, we will launch global consultations, both online and offline. People of the world, you behind your beautiful screen, will be able to tell us what democracy means to you, how you would like to be governed at the global level, what competences. Do you like a parliament? Do you hate it? Let's decide together whether we want one in the first place. And we'll, like this, with people all over the world, come to an agreement of what a global democratic system of governance can look like, what a global democratic country or federation can look like. It will last 1 year, and we need you. So register, the link is in the caption, register to take part in the consultations, and we will keep you in the loop.
Then in 2024, we're gonna actually run a massive campaign in front of the United Nations to present the idea and to basically say, look, this is how the United Nations or similar institution should look like, and how we're gonna actually attract their attention. In 2025, the United Nations will choose their next leader, and there is a very democratic process to make this happen, but still we want to present a candidate. We want to present a candidate running on this platform, the platform of democratic global governance. And we're probably going to be vetoed, but we're going to try, most likely, because there are undemocratic countries at the helm of the United Nations. But we're going to still try, we're going to still push, and we're going to still make a huge mess out of it. And what happens if we get vetoed, Colombe?
So when we get vetoed, for me it's not really enough, we will actually build those institutions. We will have crowdsourced an incredible vision, I'm sure, coming from the people, not from 12 old dudes in a room deciding how the world will look. Us, the people, will decide. Who says we can't build it? We have the tech, we have the capacity, we are connected. Let's build a new type of global governance. And then we'll lobby countries into joining it. We'll run for elections to make countries join it and give it competences, budgets, and so on. We'll be able to work together, truly, solve global issues, and imagine, if we unite, what we can actually achieve. We held in the last years a lot of protests, and one of my favorite chants has always been, and it was before this project, together, united, we cannot be defeated. And I really believe it. Imagine if we put our collective brains, resources, passion, love together, what we can actually do. So this is why we are doing this show, How to Build a Country, because we will build a country, and we need you to do it. So subscribe to this channel, like, comment, share. Subscribe to the website so that you can actually be kept in the loop and support us. Let's do it.
Let's do it.